How is it going, everybody? You're watching Then About Tech, and today I'm gonna explain you why you should never buy the normal iPhone Pro. Let's talk about that. Okay guys, so the concept is very simple. You wanna get the flagship iPhone, the best Apple can offer you. You want a Pro iPhone, but you don't want a huge phone. You want a smaller form factor, lighter, super comfortable to hold, and of course to carry around, and of course cheaper. And that's the normal iPhone Pro, not the Pro Max. And you may think this is a great deal. You're getting pretty much all of the benefits of the Pro Max, but of course in a much more comfortable, versatile form factor. But it's not like that. Not really. And in this video, I'm gonna explain you how it's actually the opposite and how getting a normal iPhone Pro is really a bad choice. And of course, we have to start with the biggest flaw, the biggest problem of your normal iPhone Pro. And please keep in mind that throughout this whole video, I'm talking about the Pro iPhone as a general in all generations. So I'm not talking about specifically about the 16 Pro versus Pro Max or 15 Pro versus Pro Max. No, I'm talking about the iPhone Pro series, all generations, because everything that I'm going to talk about in this video is really universal, okay? So when we're talking about battery, that's really the biggest flaw of the iPhone, the normal iPhone Pro, simply because it's 35 to 40% smaller compared to the big boy, to the Pro Max. And I'm saying 35 to 40%. I'm not talking about 5% or 7%. I'm talking about over a third smaller than the Pro Max. And the problem with this, of course, is the capacity. The capacity is a third smaller as well. Therefore, you'll pretty much never be able to have a full day charge on your iPhone Pro, the normal Pro. Even if you charge it to 100% and you start your day at 100%, which is really bad for your battery. I've mentioned this many times here on the channel. So even if you start at 100%, you pretty much never be able to finish your day with some battery. It'll always die pretty much in the end of the afternoon, beginning of the night. And I know a lot of you guys are gonna say, no, Daniel, but how can you be so sure? Because it'll depend a lot on how I use my iPhone. Because if you use a lot, okay, it'll die. But if you don't use that much, you'll be able to last a full day. But that's the whole point. We're talking about a Pro iPhone. So we have the normal iPhone and the Pro iPhone. So people who actually want a Pro iPhone, in the huge majority, are actually power users. They're people who take a ton of photos and videos, that edit on their phones, that work with their phones, that game, that consume a ton of media, like videos, like social media, like streaming, and so on. So if you want to get a Pro phone, you are a Pro user or a power user in the majority of cases. So having such a small battery is so bad, because if you use your iPhone a lot, you want your battery to last. And I can guarantee you that a Pro Max phone will pretty much always last a full day, whereas the Pro phone will pretty much never last a full day. And exactly because of this, we have a second problem when we're talking about the normal Pro iPhone battery. And that's because since the capacity, the battery itself is so small, and you generally have to charge it multiple times, at least 2 times a day, your battery health will go down way faster compared to the Pro Max. Because as you know, the more you use your iPhone, the more cycles you go through, and of course, the lower your maximum capacity will be. So your battery health will drop way faster on a Pro iPhone compared to a Pro Max. And especially because of this, we have another problem, which is the resale price. So one of the first things that everyone sees when they're trying to sell a used iPhone is, of course, the battery health, the maximum capacity. And since it goes down way faster than the Pro Max, of course, you're gonna lose way more money. It's gonna depreciate much more compared to the bigger problem. And there's another problem when we're talking about resale, since we touch on this subject. And since we're talking about resale, this is the second biggest problem, biggest flaw of the normal iPhone Pro. Simply because there's not too much interest, there's not too much demand for this specific model. And again, I'm talking about all generations. it's much harder to actually resell this iPhone. Of course, you'll be able to resell. The market is always very good for used iPhones, but you will lose more value on this specific phone compared to a Pro Max. It's simple, less interest, less demand, there's just less people wanting this phone, so when you want to actually go ahead and resell it, which is what most people do, you will lose more value compared to the very, very hot Pro Max. So that's something to keep in mind. The only iPhone which is worse than the normal Pro is of course the Plus or the Mini, because no one buys those phones. So then it's even worse. But compared to the Pro Max and even to the normal, to the base iPhone, the normal Pro is way worse in resale pricing and will depreciate much more. And last but not least, we have to talk about pricing, because that's why a lot of people actually get those phones. And let's now talk about the 16 series. So the 16 Pro versus the 16 Pro Max. And when you take a look at them, that's a $200 difference when you're talking about Apple list pricing. So the 16 Pro starts at $1,000 and the 16 Pro Max at $1,200. So $200. So then you may think, wow, it's a great deal, $200 less for the same phone. But that's the thing, it's not the same phone. Simply because we have to talk about storage. That's something not a lot of people think about, but there is a big difference in storage. The base iPhone 16 Pro, $1,000 16 Pro starts at 128 gigabytes of storage, whereas the $1,200 iPhone 16 Pro Max starts with the double storage, 256. So yes, you're paying $200 more, but you're getting double the storage. And again, I have to talk about the type of user that actually gets those phones. It's a Pro phone. It's intended for Pro, heavy, power users. And for this kind of public, of demographic, you have to consider that 128 is just not enough, especially for most things that heavy users do. So then 256 is super important, because if you get a 128 base iPhone 16 Pro, the normal Pro, you probably have to spend more money with iCloud storage and so on. So then when you think about it, the Pro Max starts to look like a very, very more interesting deal. And you also have to think about that sometimes on some generations of the iPhone, the Pro Max actually have more features than the normal Pro. But since it doesn't happen on every generation, I'm not gonna talk about this specifically on this video, but just so you have an idea, for the previous generation, the 15 Pro, the camera on the Pro Max is better. It has more zoom, so not necessarily you're getting the same phone. Sometimes the Pro Max is actually better and has more features. So think about that when you're thinking about value for money. So my verdict, my conclusion right here. Of course, you have some benefits on getting the iPhone Pro, the normal Pro. Again, it's super comfortable, super easy to hand, super portable. I've had some Pro models like this, for example, which is a normal 14 Pro, and I liked this, but what I lost, especially when we're talking about battery, is just not worth it. Especially on battery, is not worth it. Sometimes I've had to charge this iPhone 3 times a day when it was new. I'm not talking about now, that's 2 years old. I'm talking about when it was new. Battery degradation is insane. I've never had a battery health drop so intense as I've had on this iPhone. Is below 80%, and I haven't been using this phone. I just use it for like a year. So just sitting around, degradation is incredible. Every time I get it, it's always dead, because the battery won't last even in standby mode a couple days. It's incredibly bad. Of course, not to mention the other factors like resale, and then of course pricing as well. So then, in the end of the day, if I could give you my advice from my 15 years of experience doing this, and of course using iPhones, you know me for so long, is it's much easier and much better for you and for your money to get used to a slightly bigger phone, a slightly heavier and slightly less comfortable phone. I know it's not perfect, but it's much better to get used to that and then have all of the benefits of the Pro Max than to have this comfort of having a smaller phone, but then having so many problems as I've mentioned here on this video, all right? So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video as usual, guys. Bye-bye.